Captain Forest here, and in today's video I'm going to be guest appearing on Corn's channel. Hey everyone, in today's video I'm going to be showing this cool matchup, and we're going to find out who wins in an equal stats situation, Bison versus Frieza. Now if you guys are new to Corn's channel and mine, please leave a like, comment down below, and of course subscribe for further content. Huge shout out to the HQ squad, the Crusaders, you know who you are, so huge shout out to the team. They're a big help in my videos. So much appreciated to the team. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and cover Bison, talk about some of the things he brings to the table, and then after that I'm going to move on to Frieza. I will need to talk about Bison's deadly power called Psycho Power. Psycho Power is the negative version of Soul Power that is brought into manifestation via emotions and desires. Bison was able to meditate and study this power at its full potential by purging out the purity out of his soul and perfecting it. This great chaotic power affects you on a physical, spiritual and mental level. Psycho Power entails many other versatile uses which Bison has demonstrated with, such as shooting out a ball of concentrated Psycho Power. If it comes into contact with someone, it will explode and affecting them on the physical, spiritual and mental level. Bison can use the Psycho Crusher, where he engulfs his whole body in psycho energy and rams into his opponent. He can also implode your body with Psycho Power, and he can also perform the Psycho Inferno and Psycho Blast, where he can blast out a flame of Psycho energy and blast out a small ball of Psycho energy. He can perform the Psycho Cannon, where he charges and throws a ball of Psycho energy at his opponent at full power and full speed. Bison can also perform a giant area of effect, covering the whole area in Psycho energy. He can perform the Psycho Counter, where he counterattacks his foes, and he can also absorb and redirect an attack and imbue it with Psycho Power at full power right back at his opponents, which is very impressive. He can plant a Psycho Bomb in you, which he can manually detonate himself, or it explodes on its own. Bison can imbue his hands with Psycho Power and attack with it, and with the use of Psycho Power it allows Bison to teleport. He can interact with souls and rip them outside of people and out of himself, and he can torment and possess people with his Psycho Power. Bison also has energy absorption. He's able to steal some of Rose's soul energy, which is very impressive. There are also some Death Hacks properties with Psycho Power, specifically in his hand, so if it comes into contact with you via Death Touch, it kills you instantly. So Bison has demonstrated this on Rose, just grabbing her, just literally just one shots her, just instantly Death Hacks kills her, and just imbuing her body with that stuff just kills her. And he's also done it to a Shadowloo guard as well. And Bison can also summon a psychic barrier and can also use telekinesis on his opponents too. And Bison also has some power nullification, so he's able to power null Soul Power, which is physical, spiritual and mental in nature, like its opposite counterpart called Psycho Power. So moving on to resistances, Bison was able to survive Akuma's Raging Demon, and Bison was able to tank a Soul Spiral from Rose. So Bison has mind, body and soul resistances. Bison also has resistance to poison. Fang's poison did nothing to him. Fang's poison is so potent it can vaporize your body into small purple crystals. And lastly, Bison has type 6 immortality and can inhabit other people's bodies and in their vessels, pretty much just use them as vessels. Okay, so that's going to round up Bison. I'm going to go ahead and move on to Frieza and talk about some of the stuff that he brings to the table, and then after that I'm going to go ahead and go to my final analysis and chop it up from there. Ki manipulators are often able to emit their ki from their bodies for various effects, most frequently in the form of an energy attack or aura. Ki emission can be far more flexible, allowing users to perform feats of elemental manipulation, creating constructs to use as weapons, granting a portion of their ki to others, etc, etc. The ability to fly, run, or stand on water or other mediums that would not normally support their weight, perform gravity-defying acrobatics, instantly jumping to another location, create after images or doppelgangers, or perform other enhanced movements are common amongst ki manipulators. How? Ki manipulators are able to suppress the ki that naturally flows off their bodies to render themselves virtually invisible to ki sensing techniques. Frieza is capable of telekinetically manipulating and carrying objects. Frieza can trap opponents thanks to his psychokinetic technique, aka the imprisonment ball. This technique prevents his opponents from escaping, and while they're trapped within, he can toy with them, kicking them around like a ball before ultimately kicking them into the ground, causing a massive explosion. This explosion is so powerful that it creates a vacuum, sucking everything nearby to its center. Frieza spends time smacking Goku around and fires an enormous energy wave at the sphere, blasting it, crashing into planet Namek. However, it is revealed that in the instant between the impact and the explosion, Goku is fast enough to escape not only the explosion, but the vacuum as well. In the anime version of the Tournament of Power, Frieza utilized an imprisonment ball to paralyze God of Destruction Toppo. While it held him long enough for Frieza to deliver a barrage of attacks, Toppo broke free by powering up. Frieza has a technique similar to Krillin's known as the Death Saucer. Frieza can make 2 of these discs at once and throw them at his opponents. They hone in on targets, making them difficult to escape. He has the Death Psycho Ball at his disposal. By launching a small invisible sphere of ki into his opponent, Frieza can force them to rise into the air as the sphere expands within them, ultimately exploding and destroying them from the inside. Up next, we have the famous Death Ball. After gathering ki in the shape of a sphere with a single fingertip, Frieza creates a large and extremely powerful energy sphere that can easily destroy planets. His expertise in the technique allows him to restrain it to instead put a planet on a timer towards destruction if he so pleases. Its most powerful variant is the Supernova, a massive sun-like sphere of energy that takes some time to charge, but that has immense power. As Golden Frieza, he upgrades this technique into an even more powerful version called the Golden Death Ball. Who remembers the Death Beam? You know, one of Frieza's favorite finishing techniques, a small, highly concentrated beam of ki fired from the fingertip with enough force to easily punch through an opponent's body. Frieza often uses this technique to torture his opponents before finishing them off, and can use it with great precision. He can fire many of them in quick succession, overwhelming his opponents with a barrage of attacks. After his mental training in Hell, Frieza gained such control over his ki that his death beams can hone in on his opponents. Now, Frieza's most striking trait, however, is his phenomenal survivability, which even the other members of his family lack. He is able to survive being bisected by his own attacks and being blasted into Namek, which exploded shortly afterwards. Despite being completely drained of ki in the process, and when he was resurrected by Shenron, he appeared as the several bits of himself that Trunks had cut into him. From there, he has resuscitated and fully healed by a medical machine. Despite his injuries, he can also survive in the vacuum of space. After first gaining the form, Golden Frieza drains stamina rapidly and thus cannot be maintained for long, but he eventually grows to master this form and grow past this weakness. Golden Frieza held back and survived Sydra's destruction energy. Sydra grants to the boss of the Universe 9's assassin some energy of destruction to use it against Frieza. When Frieza is hit by the energy, he struggles to defend against it, being engulfed by the energy. However, Frieza was only pretending to be hurt by the attack, and to everyone's shock, Frieza manages to compress the energy back into a sphere, also killing the surprised leader assassin. After that, Frieza suddenly hits Goku with the energy of destruction, saying security is the greatest enemy. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and give my thoughts on who I think wins more often than not in a equal stats situation. Now, this matchup is pretty interesting. It's very close. Both combatants have chi manipulation in their own unique way. They both would be able to counteract each other, especially with Bison's psycho power, which can counteract things that affect you on a physical, spiritual, and mental level. I don't think that's going to be inherently an issue. He'd be able to counteract a lot of Frieza's attacks, especially things like telekinesis. They both can use telekinesis. So I think they just cancel each other out. Especially they both have like chi barriers. They can both like flex and erect a ki barrier to block out any types of assaults from each other. So if it came down to like range, they'd definitely be able to just counteract each other in that department. Now if they use like telekinesis offensively, like getting like random objects like cars and rocks and terrain, throwing it at each other, again, I just see them just blocking that out too. Bison does have some tactics he could use. He could use his Bison teleportation, try and get the drop on Frieza. However, Frieza does have ki detection. He can sense chi, so he would know where Bison is and he would just counterattack, and Bison would just then have to resort to using his barrier or just like parrying the attack or getting into fisticuffs. Now I know Frieza does have like sealing tactics and like imprisonment tactics, especially with like his chi, but again, I think Bison would just break out of it. He just resists that just fine. Now when it comes to things like the invisible exploding chi bomb that Frieza can do, like when he did it to Krillin, that could definitely come into effect if that gets inside Bison, especially if the chi is invisible. However, Bison, he can purge chi out of his body, he can purge souls out of his body, he's done it before, so he would just be able to just get it out of his body. I think he'd be fine if that did happen. So there's just a lot of ways they can both counter each other. They're both so similar in every regard. It's really close, honestly. Now, Frieza does have another trick up his sleeve. He does have pretty much like the Destructo Discs, which obviously Destructo Discs themselves can neg durability. I definitely think that if it hits Bison or his barriers, that definitely could rip him apart. But I think Bison would be able to just basically just keep teleporting away from him, blast them away, or he just absorb them, because he does have energy absorption. He can absorb ki, so he'd be able to just counter that and absorb the Destructo Discs. So again, another way just to counter that. The Death Bomb could also be countered as well. Again, if he tries to blow up the terrain, if Frieza tries to like throw a giant death ball, he'd just be able to just teleport away from the terrain just fine. Again, just so many counters, so many ways to just kind of deal with Frieza. It's very close, but I think ultimately the huge tactic in Bison's arsenal is his death hacks, and that's the chi. Basically, it's like within his chi, so he has like death hacks properties. He could flex a giant area of effect, or if that touches Frieza physically and it gets inside his body, he'd definitely be done for. I think if Frieza gets touched with the death hacks properties, which I think he will definitely will get hit with the death hacks properties if he gets into fisticuffs of Bison, and Bison just needs to grab his arm or his face and just imbue his body with it, and then that's going to be GG. Bison would take victory in that scenario. Now, another thing, Bison does have type 6, he does have parasitic, so he could try and get inside Frieza's body. However, I think Frieza would be able to just resist it just fine, because of course, Frieza and like other Dragon Ball Z characters, thanks to Chi, they're able to resist mind, body and soul abilities that try to affect them on these levels. So that I think Frieza would just be able to just reject Bison out of his body if that happened, and Frieza would just like terminate him completely. So it just comes down to how the fight goes, but I think with high difficulty, I personally lean more so with Bison. Frieza is pretty skilled. He's shown to fight Goku, embarrass Goku and finesse Goku in combat. Bison is also skilled too. He's fought Ryu. However, if it comes down to actual fisticuffs, no more hexes, no more trying to like use like telekinesis or like, bombardment and chi attacks from a distance. If it comes down to like close and Bison starts imbuing his fingers and hands with chi and his body, and if he literally touches Frieza and grabs him, which I think he will, he does have the skill to do so, and they'd definitely be able to react, especially with equal stats coming into play. We know how equal stats is, speed, AP, or equalize, so there isn't necessarily a huge edge unless skill is involved. So I definitely see Bison being able to touch Frieza, and if that does happen, I think Frieza's done for. If the death hacks comes into play, and if that gets implemented, he gets one shot, I'm afraid. He doesn't have any resistances to something to that degree, something like death hacks, and I think that's going to be the ultimate deciding factor for this matchup. I have to give victory to Bison with the highest of highest difficulty. I just think like there's just a lot of counters for Bison. He's able to resist a lot of what Frieza can do. His tactics won't apply very well in the type of scenario they're in. He'd be able to counter a lot of Frieza's unorthodox behavior and how his chi attacks work and any types of like destructive or subtle or, you know, vindictive tactics. Bison would just fight back with his own, more often than not, equal stats. Bison, high difficulty. But thank you guys for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment down below. And yeah, it's been real. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.